All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Sober Yoga Girl. I'm really happy to have Kate with me here today on the show. And Kate is an American mom living in Switzerland. And she is also in the Instagram sober fitness world. And that's actually how we originally connected. So we did an Instagram live a couple months back. And I'm really excited to this time hear Kate's story. So welcome, Kate.
Hi, thank you.
How are you
Yes,
doing?
I'm good. And it's been really enjoyable knowing you. I think I love the posts, the perspective that you share on Instagram. I find the sober Instagram community to be really supportive and positive, and it's like a little burst of positivity in my day when I see that you've shared something. So
Thank you. So why don't we start out by you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So like you said, I'm an American mom. I live in Switzerland. I have three kids. They're all really close in age. I sort of got started having kids a little bit later. I guess I was in my mid 30s and in a rush, which I think is very typical of me. I'm always like in a rush to be to the finish line, right? Achieve my goals. But before I settled down with my husband, I worked in sales for about 20 years, corporate sales, and had always pushed for a career, for financial independence, having gone through therapy a few different times, recently with getting sober. I learned a lot about myself, and there's definitely some trauma from my childhood connected to financial instability. So, I grew up on a dairy farm, and while my basic needs were met, there was always this like stress over paying bills or, the crops or the animals. There was this environmental stress, and that affected me, I think, to the point where I always had to get the best grades when I was in high school and be the best athlete so I could get a scholarship and go to school. Then when I was in college, it was all about being the best student so I could graduate at the top of my class and get a really good job. Then when I was working, it was the same thing, like keep pushing your career so you can advance yourself, because the further along you go professionally, the more money you make and the less instability you'll feel, right? So this kind of force propelled me a lot through my life, and was kind of how I defined myself. And then when I got married and had kids and had become reliant on another person, it just was a real struggle for me. And I think as each child came along, I lost a little more of my independence. And then, so we had my oldest two in the US, then we moved overseas, and my third came along pretty quickly after that. And so all of a sudden, here I am in Poland with three little children, no friends, no sense of self or who I was. And the drinking definitely took on a whole new dynamic there. When I look back at like the drinking in my life, it was something that I used alcohol to cope with anxiety. But it was, I consider it something that had been managed because I was working and I was progressing my career, and I had a wonderful husband and healthy children. I mean, on the outside, everything looked like it was all wrapped up in a pretty bow, right? And then when I was in Poland was the drinking just, I think, was probably an issue, but not as evident. And then, not having access to English speaking, mental health care, and suffering from postpartum depression. I think I just really turned to alcohol, and it just was one of these things that, going back to always wanting to be the best, I was going to drink the most alcohol, right? We really struggled our last year in Poland. And I went to a treatment center in Scotland for 4 weeks I tried a lot of times to quit drinking because at some point I realized that my relationship with alcohol was unhealthy, and I tried on various occasions to quit. My husband wanted me to go for treatment. And so I just, in an effort to kind of get him off my back, went to this facility in Scotland, became highly recommended from our insurance company. And, there was an element of me doing it for somebody else, which I think when you're trying to get sober is never the right approach. Like if you're going to quit drinking alcohol, you need to be doing it for yourself, not for other people. And then the way the treatment center approached sobriety was using AA and going through the steps. And I just had a really bad experience with AA. But whatever, I was always a good student. So I did what I was supposed to do those 4 weeks there. And then I got back home and never really resolved my issues with alcohol. And then the first kind of conflict that I had with my husband, or the first kind of sense of feeling overwhelmed again by being a mom of 3 young kids, I turned right to alcohol. So we left Poland and settled here in Switzerland, which is where my husband's from. And I swore that I would never be like the drunk foreign mom in this small little village, because I figured, I'm already up against a lot, being a non-German speaker. And pretty quickly, I just was like, I don't even care. Right? Like, let me stumble down to the gas station and buy some alcohol because I'm hungover and I've got the shakes, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just amazing, I think, how quickly the drinking, just how quickly I grew to rely on it and how unhealthy I became as a result of it,
Yeah. And
I don't know, the thing about the drinking that bothered me was that I became this person, I don't even know. I'm getting upset. It's been 2 years since I stopped almost, but the drinking made me this person that I didn't even like. She was really dishonest. She was nasty. God, I said the worst things to my husband. And I was just a real crappy mom. I think turn on the TV all the time because I'm too hungover to deal with parenting. So yeah, so we moved here in September of 2019. And in a very short amount of time, my drinking really escalated. And the last time I drank, I was on a 5-day bender. I don't even know how I got alcohol. But I got it somehow. I managed to stay blacked out for 5 days straight. And on January 30th, so 23 months ago today, it was like somebody kicked me in the ass and woke me up, all of a sudden I'm alert, I'm awake, and I've just had enough with this life, and at that point, my husband wasn't even sleeping in the same room with me. Our relationship was one drink away from being over. So I went down to the guest room where he was sleeping, and I was like, I need help. Please, I can't do this anymore. And so this was at 3 a.m. So he's like, okay, why don't you go back to bed and we'll deal with this in the morning. I said, okay. And so we got in touch with, there's here in Switzerland, I think there's a lot of resources available to people who struggle with addiction and dependence of people struggling with addiction. So my husband got in touch with this organization that supports people with addiction or families going through that. And they recommended a clinic here in Switzerland. And the clinic is a German-speaking facility. And obviously, it's, we're here in Switzerland, it's, and we're trying to find something close to home. So I just said, okay, that's where they recommend me going. I let's just sign me up. Because when I woke up, when I say like I like got kicked in the butt, awake, jolted awake, however you want to describe it, I was ready to do whatever I had to do to get that like monkey off my back, And so I went into this clinic, and my German was like high-end beginner, I'd say, like somewhere between being a beginner. I mean, I could talk about housework all day long, but coming up with like medical jargon in German, like forget it. But I was, like I said, like I wanted to like end this battle, right? So I went there on January 31st. So I spent the night in the hospital on the 30th, detoxing, continued my detox in treatment at this facility. Before they even addressed the drinking, they said like, okay, you are just a giant ball of nerves. Like mentally, I was shot. And so they started me on an antidepressant and gave me some herbs, if you will, for my anxiety, which I'm not into holistic medicine at all, but for whatever reason, this concoction of like passion flower and valerian root just calmed me right down. And I spent a week detoxing, I think, not only from alcohol, but also from everything that had been piling up on me in my life since I became a mom. Because this was like the first time I spent away from my kids, like since the first was born 6 years ago. This week was necessary in me starting my, let's say, like rehabilitation. And so after after I detoxed, and, because when you go into treatment and you have to go through alcohol detox, they check your vitals, they give you medication to manage your withdrawal symptoms, because depending on how severe your alcoholism is, you try to withdraw from alcohol completely on your own, you could have life-threatening reactions, right? So I did a week of, like I said, detoxing from stress and alcohol in life, and started to look into the different options available to me in terms of therapy. And so the thing that kind of stuck out to me was movement therapy, because going back to high school and being younger and growing up on a farm, I was always very active. And I sort of embraced that therapy, got to the sessions as many times as I could, added in some other forms of therapy, art therapy, craft therapy, basically whatever they wanted me to do. I was like, I'll do it, give it to me. If it means leaving this place in 6 weeks sober, I am all for it. And I started therapy again, and continued the therapy when I got home, and looked into the things that caused the development of this unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and did a lot of work on myself internally, I think. And here I am. Today is my 700th day alcohol-free. So
congratulations. And wow, you've been through so much. And I can so relate to, I think we've talked about this before, but like that feeling of being like, definitely being an expat influenced my drinking a lot, that feeling of being uprooted. And I can only imagine, like, when I got to Kuwait or in Abu Dhabi, I at least kind of had a job and a way to connect with people and, make friends. And I've always thought like to go along as a partner must be so hard, because it's like, where are your, how do you find your people? How do you connect?
Yeah.
Really hard.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me. Like, it's funny because when my husband and I, so when we met, he was living here in Switzerland and I was in the US. And so he uprooted himself to go to the US so we could kind of see if our relationship had staying power, And he went through a expat orientation, and the woman said to him that, look, like most of these expat assignments are great the first 9 months, But after the newness of it all wears off and you start thinking about your family or thinking about your life, what it used to be like that month, like 9 to whatever, until you establish a new life for yourself, I guess, is those are really challenging times. And so it's funny because like when we went to Poland, that's exactly what happened, is like those first 9 months there where we were being in Poland and living abroad with my family was so new to me. It was like, oh, wow, it's so exciting. Let's go out and like explore. Let's get the house set up. And right around that 9-month mark was when I had gotten pregnant again, which we wanted 3 kids, but I had wanted a bit of a break before the third one came along because I had my girls were only 9 months apart. And so, no, sorry, 18 months apart. Jeez, 9 months apart. That's crazy. But anyway, so here I am, so I found out I was pregnant again. And I was dealing with these feelings of missing home and not having any friends. And now I'm going to have another baby soon. And what the heck? So that was definitely a rough time. And I definitely went through this mourning period of my friendships and my country and all of this stuff. And then pretty much as soon as my son was born, because I hadn't dealt with those feelings, I hadn't processed that. As soon as he was born and the nice bout of postpartum depression was sprinkled on this situation, I was like a hot mess in a dumpster fire. But yeah, the nice thing, if you will, of having gone through all that, I think, is that, these friendships that I was so sad about losing, I realized, those friendships were all in some way connected to alcohol. Oh, we're going to the local art show. Let's drink. Or there's a movie coming out. Let's go to the theater that serves alcohol, right? Those relationships that I thought were so great only had one thing in common, and that was alcohol, And so when I look back at this period of time, I think all of this stuff was necessary for me to kind of reevaluate what's important to me in my life, who my friends are, and the things that I need to be the best version of myself. That period, I don't think I would ever go back and want to magic all that stuff away, because I don't think I'd be where I am today if I hadn't have gone through all of that stuff, Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. That stuff makes us who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. The nice thing, I think, of kind of addressing this issue with my kids being so young, I think, was that the younger ones don't really remember that time when I was sick, as my oldest calls it. But she remembers, my oldest. And so we're working through that right now with her. She has anxiety like me. And sometimes when she's seen me really stressed out, it crosses her mind, oh boy, is mommy going to go buy some alcohol and lock herself in her room? But we talk through these challenges, and I think that's a really one thing I'm thankful for in giving up alcohol, is that I have the kind of mental capacity or presence of mind to address her anxiety with her, which is something that never really was addressed with me when I was younger. I think that when you peel the layers back on your issues with alcohol, or, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not that you woke up one day, and decided to fall into a bottle of vodka. There was a lot going into that, right? And one of the things besides loss of identity was anxiety, anxiety to the point where it feels like someone's sitting on my chest and I can't breathe. And I see that with my oldest, and we work through that. We talk about it. And I'm not a perfect mom, even sober, by any means at all. But I know that they get the best part of me, the best that I'm able to give. And it's better than anything they would have gotten from me if I had still been drinking.
Yeah. And that's amazing. Like that you now are able to be present and be able to show up for your daughter in that way. Like it's huge.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I really am grateful, like looking back at like the last almost 2 years, like things have just really like blossomed for me, I think, and friendships, doing stuff that I never thought I would ever do, like talk to you here on a podcast or be on Instagram and talking about fitness and making these like silly like reels, like which I like dancing in front of a camera or going on like doing these Instagram lives, like all of those things before would have given me massive doses of anxiety and would have been all I need to go like, oh, let me, get a drink of something. But I think it's really amazing. Like when you think alcohol really, really holds you back from being the best version of yourself or achieving your dreams, or I know that sounds really corny, but sorry.
Yeah.
I've become like really, really corny and punny as I've like gotten so like I'm living my best life.
But I'm exactly the same. I'm exactly really the same. It's so true.
Yeah. So that's I feel like it's the end of the year and you kind of like are reflecting on stuff, right, that you've gone through in the last year. And now again, like being close to hitting 2 years, I'm just feeling very, very grateful and excited to see kind of what else is in store for me,
Yeah. Yeah. And as we were saying before, like the third year is really when it starts to blossom. So I can't wait to follow along with you too and see what happens next.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I have one more question for you. Yeah. I'm wondering if you had any advice or wisdom to give someone who wanted to start an alcohol-free journey, what would you suggest?
I think like surrounding yourself with positive influences is really important. And it doesn't have to be like your spouse. For example, like when I stopped drinking, my husband, who never really drank a lot, as it were, just was like, you know what? Like we're not going to have any more alcohol in the house. I'm going to go along this journey with you. And that was great. For those first few months, I needed that. I don't think that everybody does, though. I think having positive role models or positive connections to sobriety is really, really important. And I'll tell you why. When I first got sober and came home from treatment, there was the first COVID lockdown and there was no place for me to go. Right. Yeah. So I just did my thing at home. My husband, took care of the groceries and I could be in my little protective bubble. But after a while after 9 months, that got like just, it was enough, right? I wanted to start creeping out into the world. And I didn't have any role models in that sense, like to look to people who could go to bars and order a non-alcoholic drink. I didn't even think about mocktails, right? I wasn't too connected to the world of Quit Lit. And I just didn't have a connection to life without alcohol. And so for some reason, like I was on Instagram and I don't even know how I stumbled upon sober Instagram, but I did. And I feel like my connection to sobriety or my perspective on it, being a death sentence to a degree, shifted. Like, look at all these amazing women, like writing about sobriety or kicking ass dating without alcohol or socializing without alcohol, parenting without alcohol. Like once I had connected to once I connected to this positive alcohol-free movement, I think it really changed my outlook on what a life without alcohol looks like. And I think that I would definitely suggest to people to, like if they don't have an Instagram account, go ahead and create one and find Sober Instagram, because it's just such a lovely, positive, this is what your life can be like without alcohol. And I'm not saying that life without alcohol is perfect. I mean, I have my ups and downs here. I mean, parenting is difficult with or without alcohol. Life, you never know what life's going to throw at you, right? But I know that being fully present allows me to deal with the conflict that comes my way much better than having alcohol in my life would, right? So connection is really key. I don't know where I read this, but it's, I think, a popular sober quote, and it's that the opposite of addiction is connection. And I think that's really important for someone who wants to get rid of alcohol, is to connect to others who are doing that. And I think that will be a great boost to your sober journey. And then also, I think, to give yourself some grace, because, unlike me, who woke up in a treatment center and was able to spend 6 weeks focusing on myself and my sobriety, a lot of people get sober in the real world. And the real world is a lot more challenging than a sterile hospital where you're randomly tested for alcohol, right? So giving yourself some grace and just, figuring out what sobriety looks like for you, I think is really important too.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, amazing. Well, Kate, thank you so much for coming on the show. And it was honestly so inspiring to just hear how much you've overcome and how far you've come from, 700 days ago. And so it's a lot to be super proud of.
Gonna go do some burpees now. 700 burpees for sobriety.
Amazing. And I'm going to share on the episode description Kate's information, so you can find her on Instagram, follow her amazing content. And if you're looking for any sober fitness, Kate is the person to look to. So I'll put the link in there.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on the show, and I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, cool. Happy New Year. Thank you.
Happy New Year. Bye.
Bye.